Hey everybody, it's Roberto and welcome to another Game of Thrones video. In this video I'm going to be explaining Oberyn Martell and why he's Tyrion's champion in The Viper and the Mountain. Now this week Game of Thrones is actually on break for Memorial Day, but we'll be actually seeing the episode The Viper and the Mountain next week. But I wanted to do a video on the Red Viper as well as the Mountain, just to give you kind of a prelim going into their matchup with the trial by combat over Tyrion's innocence or guilt. If you're just tuning into the channel, I actually do Game of Thrones videos every week, so definitely go ahead and subscribe to get new videos from me. I also do graphic design videos on Mondays and Photoshop CC tutorial videos on Thursdays, so if you're into that kind of thing, go ahead and check that out as well. So let's briefly talk about what happened last week in Mockingbird, episode 7 for this season, and the scene that killed the hashtag on Twitter, I will be your champion. We had this great conversation between Oberyn Martell and Tyrion where he explains that they actually met when Oberyn was a young child and Tyrion had just been born, and that everybody had been talking all this nonsense about Tyrion being a monster and a freak of nature. And we've already seen that people outside of Westeros have a completely different view of things than people in Westeros, and a primary example of this is the way that Oberyn explained that they don't disdain or despise bastards the way that they do in Westeros, and that, they look down upon certain things that Westeros people do in terms of their culture that they feel are more barbaric. The people over in places like Dorne and Lys and Essos and everything like that are apparently very different in terms of their culture. And Oberyn is a primary example of this. So he doesn't look down on or despise Tyrion for being a dwarf. Out of everyone, he's actually warmed up to Tyrion, whereas he by default hates the Lannisters because of their involvement in his sister's death, Ellia of Dorne. She was the wife, if you guys don't remember from earlier episodes, of Crown Prince Rhaegar Targyrean back during Robert's Rebellion. And what happened was Sir Gregor Clegane the Mountain, the older brother of the Hound and one of Tywin Lannister's bannermen and knights, actually raped and murdered Ellia of Dorne, Oberyn's older sister. So Oberyn has a great motivation for being Tyrion's champion because this is going to allow him to get revenge and exact what he feels is justice against the killer of his sister and her children. So that's why he's doing this, in addition to the fact that he knows that Tyrion, if you saw the trial, he knows Tyrion is innocent, and he actually doesn't have anything against Tyrion personally. And if anything, he would have something against Tywin. And Tywin clearly wants Tyrion out of the way, so this is kind of a double whammy in terms of the revenge plot for Oberyn. He gets to piss off Tywin, and he gets to take his revenge on the Mountain. So many of you have asked in other videos and stuff like that about why Oberyn is called the Red Viper, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about his backstory. When Oberyn was 16 years old, he was caught in bed with the lover of a whole nother lord, and he ended up challenging him to a duel to first blood because Oberyn was, a prince of Dorne, so it wasn't going to be a duel to the death. But Oberyn and him actually have their duel, and both of them get cut, and apparently that was supposed to be the end of it, but Oberyn used poison and the Lord ended up dying of his wounds a few days later. So after that, Oberyn was known forever by his friends and foes alike as the Red Viper. After that, he was sent into exile and he traveled to free cities, much like Daenerys is doing. So he's been to places like Essos, where Varys is from. He's been to Lys. He's been all over. He even rode with the Second Sons, the mercenary company that Daario Naharis was part of. So he's been all around, and he's seen all the other things that people in the current cast on Westeros haven't seen. He's seen things that we saw with Dany over in the East. So he's kind of representative of bringing that culture and that awareness to Westeros and bringing those things to the forefront as foreshadowing for things that'll happen when Daenerys finally gets here. So while he was traveling the free cities, he also trained at the Citadel, where maesters like Grand Maester Pycelle and Master Aemon trained to forge their master links, and where they learned all this scholarly knowledge. As a result, he's unrivaled in his knowledge of poisons. You'd have to be someone like Grand Maester Pycelle to even come close to the knowledge of poisons that Oberyn Martell has. That's why he was actually a suspect in the events of the Purple Wedding, because he would have been one of the other people who could have pulled it off. Now, we've heard a lot of talk about the great fighters of Westeros. We know that you have Sir Barristan Selmy, Barristan the Bold, as he's sometimes called, Jaime Lannister, even Eddard Stark, and the Mountain. But these are only considered the top tier of fighters in Westeros. Oberyn Martell is considered one of the top tier fighters across the world, and he's much more well-traveled and well-known than any of these guys because they just stick to the Seven Kingdoms in Westeros. Oberyn Martell is known and feared for his warrior prowess the whole world over. So in a way, that puts him in a whole different league and a tier of his own to where he could easily be underestimated, but don't take the Lannisters for granted where that's concerned because they're not stupid. Tywin is well aware of Oberyn's reputation, as is Cersei. So, you know, this is bad news for them that Oberyn Martell is chosen to be Tyrion's champion. This is probably the worst news they could have gotten, aside from it being Jaime. So, even in his prime, Jaime would have had a hard time dealing with the Mountain just because of his freakish nature, his overwhelming strength, and that he's faster than he should be. But remember that they would be doing sword-on-sword combat with Jaime using a regular sword and the Mountain using his giant greatsword. Oberyn Martell has a different advantage because he is from Dorne, and as part of the Dornish royal family, he trains in the use of the spear. That is their weapon of choice, just like their house sigil is the red spear going through the sun. So that's going to be a really interesting matchup because that gives him a range advantage and neutralizes some of the arm's reach and the power that the Mountain has to play with. So his weapon of choice being the spear, that's going to definitely help him. Not to mention, Oberyn Martell is ridiculously fast. If you guys haven't seen the preview video for episode 8, you should definitely check it out, and it gives you a better idea of this matchup, and you can see the concern on Tywin and Cersei's face when this battle gets started. So that's going to be epic, and it's going to be great to watch. Also, remember that Oberyn Martell, as I said, is a master of poisons. So that doesn't necessarily mean he has to land a kill shot on the Mountain. He could fight a war of attrition against him and just, nick him with different cuts and minor wounds and let the poison do most of the work and sap his strength. That's the kind of fighter that Oberyn Martell would likely be. So just kind of keep that in mind as well, that, it's not just a David versus Goliath match here. Not that we don't know how that ended, but, it's going to be a really close matchup because you have the classic battle of speed and tactics versus power and strength. Also, remember the House Martell family work. They're the only one of the Seven Kingdoms in Westeros that actually didn't fall to Aegon Targaryen's original conquest. That's why their motto is unbowed, unbent, unbroken. So you gotta remember that he has the pride of House Martell on the line here. He has revenge on his mind for his sister. Don't be surprised if he pulls an Inigo Montoya. And for those of you who aren't children of the 80s, that's a reference to The Princess Bride. It is certainly a movie that you should check out if you've never seen it, or if you haven't heard of it. You'll definitely enjoy it if you're a fan of Game of Thrones. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out my Game of Thrones Episode 8 review when it comes out next week. Also, stay tuned for my video where I talk about Gregor Clegane the Mountain and him being Cersei's champion. That's going to be a whole nother video, so stay tuned for that. It'll give you more insight to the matchup before Episode 8 happens. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like this video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe, share it with friends, watch the other Game of Thrones videos on my channel, and as always, thanks for watching.